That disgusting fishing hobby of yours ends today, Garrison. I don't care if you've been here since the Stone Age. This is now a civilized community, and we will not tolerate your backwoods behavior, ruining our property values. That's what Priscilla Whitehaven hissed at me, standing on my dock at 6:30 in the morning, her French manicured fingers clutching a gallon jug of industrial algae killer like it was holy water and I was some kind of lake demon. She dumped $8,500 worth of copper sulfate into my research site right then and there, while 47 racing drones buzzed over our heads, and her cell phone caught my expression for legal evidence. Let me tell you, that morning mist rising off Lake Mitchell, it turned a perfect blue-green, the kind of sickly color that tells you everything you love is about to die. Yeah, that happened. Priscilla thought she was the main character, thought she could bulldoze through decades of environmental work and, I guess, the federal government too. Only, what she didn't know was that my lake wasn't just some old man's fishing hole. It was a federally designated research station, and she'd just committed a crime that would bring down her world, her husband's judicial career, and an entire HOA conspiracy stretching across 3 states. You ever have a neighbor who acts like their lawn chair gives them the right to run your life? Well, buckle up, because here's how one woman's greed turned into the most satisfying slice of federal justice you'll ever see. So, my name's Thaddeus Garrison. I'm a marine biologist. Yeah, the guy who gets giddy about snail populations, water chemistry, all that stuff you pretend to be interested in when your kid brings home a science fair project. 15 years ago, I led the biggest environmental restoration project Virginia's ever seen, after the Chesapeake oil spill. They didn't just give me a plaque. They handed me custodial rights to an 18-acre spring-fed lake. My own little blue jewel in the middle of Millbrook Heights, surrounded by houses that cost more than my entire college education. It's not just home, it's my life's work, my legacy. Things were peaceful enough. Most neighbors gave a friendly wave, maybe asked about the fish, sometimes brought their kids to see me release tagged specimens. Then Priscilla Whitehaven moved in, and the whole place got a lot less friendly, real fast. Picture a woman who treats HOA politics like D-Day. Platinum hair, always in a business suit, voice like a closing argument, and eyes that could curdle milk. Within 6 months, she crowned herself HOA president. Her husband, Judge Cornelius Whitehaven, being the legal muscle in her suburban war machine. 3 months later, I get my first certified letter. My unsightly fishing activities were disturbing her investment. No, really. She paid $850,000 for that lake view, and apparently watching a scientist collect samples was ruining her personal stock market. When the threats and fake legalese didn't scare me, she doubled down. Filed bogus county complaints about my dock, my equipment, you name it. Every time, the poor county inspector showed up, took one look at my federal paperwork, and left apologizing for wasting my time. By now, Priscilla was in full-on campaign mode. Chainsaws, leaf blowers, industrial mowers firing up at dawn, drowning out my water samples with diesel fumes and suburban rage. But you know what they say about bullies. Give them enough rope, and they'll hang themselves twice. And that's exactly what Priscilla did. Her big play? Hosting the inaugural Velocity Drone Racing League Championship, $50,000 prize pool, ESPN cameras, the whole shebang. She pitched it as a gift to the community, but, surprise, surprise, the league was owned by her family's company. These weren't kids' toys. They were 15-pound monsters going 60 miles an hour, cameras everywhere, engines screaming all day, every day. My research equipment started glitching out. GPS, underwater cams, you name it. But worse, the electromagnetic chaos and noise were driving the endangered Virginia spiraling snails out of existence. I started documenting everything: crashes, false readings, noise violations. I had no idea I was actually building a federal case file until Priscilla made her fatal mistake, passing a HOA ordinance banning recreational fishing and water activity during racing hours, then fining me $500 a day for setting foot on my own dock. Her husband's law firm handled the paperwork. Talk about conflict of interest. They tried to seize my research equipment, claiming community enhancement overruled federal law. She even started reporting me to every agency she could find: EPA, Fish and Wildlife, Coast Guard. But every single time, the inspectors found my paperwork in order, my permits legit, and walked away shaking their heads at the circus. The real breaking point came when I went to DC for a conference and Priscilla, in my absence, hired Hampton Environmental Services for a supposed algae emergency. $8,500 in copper sulfate, dumped right into the lake. No testing, no assessment, no warning. I came back to a toxic wasteland. Fish, snails, insects, everything dead or dying. It was like waking up from a bad dream. Except the dream had killed everything I'd built in 15 years. Here's where it gets wild. I called Dr. Elizabeth Harper at Fish and Wildlife, my federal liaison for over a decade. She goes full code red, tells me to document everything, not to touch the water, and mobilizes a hazmat team. They show up in black SUVs, suits that look straight out of sci-fi, start testing. Copper levels 4 times over the legal limit. pH so bad nothing could survive. And then, Dr. Harper drops the bomb. My lake isn't just a research site. It's protected under the Endangered Species Act, with the same legal shield as a national wildlife refuge. Any contamination is an automatic federal crime, 50 grand per violation, up to 10 years in prison. Oh, and one more thing. My contract makes me a federal officer, with actual law enforcement authority to investigate and prosecute environmental crimes on this property. I'd spent years collecting data for quarterly reports, never realizing they were building an airtight case for federal prosecutors. And now, every complaint, every harassment, every chemical dump, suddenly it was all evidence in a federal racketeering case. Turns out, the Drone League wasn't just a noisy hobby. Whitehaven Industries owned venues in 3 states, all running the same scam. Inflate property values with community events, split the profits, harass the locals into submission. The feds had been tracking this for months, and my poison lake was the smoking gun. The FBI, EPA, even the Treasury were on the case. When the day of the big race arrived, ESPN cameras everywhere, Priscilla had no clue she was about to star in her own episode of Cops. Agents were everywhere, casual clothes, credentials in their pockets, ready to turn this into the HOA sting of the decade. As the opening ceremonies kicked off, I walked down to my dock, federal badge in hand, and called out Priscilla in front of 2,000 spectators and a national TV audience. She tried to wave me off, until Agent Blackwood flashed her own badge and told Priscilla her husband was already in handcuffs. The look on her face? Priceless. The ESPN broadcast went from "Look at our lovely lake" to breaking news. HOA president arrested for environmental terrorism. Dead snails, chemical fingerprints, financial fraud, the whole mess unraveling on live TV. Priscilla screamed, swore it was all a setup, even tried the old "they're just snails" line. But Dr. Crawford from Fish and Wildlife surfaced from the water with waterproof evidence cases, and that was that. Game, set, and federal match. You ever see justice land so hard it echoes? It was more than personal revenge. It was the end of a criminal empire. Priscilla pleaded guilty to dozens of charges, turned over evidence that brought down a dozen more corrupt HOA leaders, and handed the feds $57 million in assets. Her husband lost his pension, his law license, and most of his friends. Lake Mitchell became the country's first national environmental research monument, fully restored, protected by law, and monitored 24/7. The very mansion Priscilla built is now a training center for federal environmental crime investigators. Her letter from prison sits in our archives, a little reminder that the lake remembers everything. The kids in this neighborhood now lead cleanup teams, water quality projects, environmental clubs. The noise of the drones is gone, replaced by herons and dragonflies and the laughter of people who know that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better and making sure the people who tried to destroy it become a footnote in your story. So, tell me, if someone threatened your legacy, your land, your life's work, what would you do? Drop your take in the comments. Let's hear your wildest HOA nightmare or your best revenge story. Justice isn't always a straight line, but out here on Lake Mitchell, it's loud, it's clear, and it's federally protected.